Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Even Your Dynasty Show. We are back live. We've got Caveman, Ricky's joining, and today I am not John Boy, since somebody decided to say I looked like John Boy last week. So I'll roll with that.
Or Silent Bob.
Silent Bob.
Yeah, it was going to be not so Silent Bob for a minute there, and then we rolled with not John Boy. So hope everybody's having a good Friday. It's finally the weekend, rolling up on Christmas. Doesn't seem like we're going to get our ace under the tree this year, but, we might get him after Christmas, which is fine. But, yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. How you guys doing today, though?
Good. Happy to be back.
Yeah. Yeah, just waiting on that Burnes news. Hopefully in the next, 2-3 days or so and get it right before Christmas. That'd be nice.
Yeah, David C. says he's going to Toronto.
And the Mets.
Oh, and the Mets.
And the Mets.
The Mets, too.
Pretty sure he'll say he's going to Baltimore tomorrow.
Yeah. Where's Joseph Kim when we need him?
Yeah.
Has he even been tweeting still?
No, dude, ever since the Hassan Kim, he hasn't been out and about.
I feel like he did that last year, too.
Yeah, probably.
David C., Joseph Kim, and Bay Area Bob walk into a bar.
Dude, I love that message that I sent to the group. I was like, man, I didn't get enough love. We should have done that. We should have changed all of our names on here. You could have been Bay Area Bob. I would have been David C. And we had Joseph Kim down below. That would have been awesome.
Bro. Damn. I don't know which one's worse, David C. or Joseph Kim.
Yeah. Equally bad.
At least Bay Area Bob hits some stuff. Now, whether he piggybacks or not, that remains to be debated. But at least he's semi-accurate sometimes.
Sometimes. Once in a blue moon.
Ziggy says, hey guys, usually watch the show on TV, so normally can't comment, but just want to say love the show. Hope you get out of the Farhan truther phase I was in. Keep up the great content. Love it. We're here to educate. No, there's some good things that Farhan did, but there's just too many faults as well. But we're moving on. We're in the Buster Posey era again. Love to see it. Love what he's been doing so far. I like a lot of the philosophy. I love that he's brought in a bunch of people kind of in the old school mold, some people in the analytics mold. I like the balance, and I felt like they were way too far on the analytics side. So it's good to see.
For sure. And like we mentioned before, I do think it'll be a nice balance. I don't think it'll be heavy on the, gut feel side of things. I think it will be a nice balance with some of the late additions to the front office we've seen over the last couple of weeks.
The nice old school approach, the analytics and old school approach, kind of nice mix. Love it.
Yeah. I'm going to pull this up before we get going on on our topics, but Ed says, hey, all, I have a hot take idea and wanted your opinion. Even hotter take than absorbing Rendon's contract. Yeah, sorry, man. I couldn't get on that one. Hot take. We trade for Yu Darvish and his big contract to secure getting Roki. Thoughts? I don't know if San Diego would be even willing to trade Yu Darvish within the division.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is if they're chasing Roki too, which I would assume they are, because I think they would be one of the favorites for him. I don't know if they would want to give up one of their best, attractions to pulling Roki in. So it's an outside the box thought. I like it, but I don't think it's feasible.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all be on board with doing something like that to get a young talent on that level. But I mean, in-division trades, especially of that magnitude, are extremely uncommon.
Yeah.
Amen to that. I hear you, George. We all want the Burnes deal.
Is it echoing the issue?
Yeah.
Honestly,
I think it's picking up off a different input.
I'll check it.
Yeah, honestly, with the whole Burnes situation and Scott Boras, same with what we've been hearing about Alex Bregman, it honestly just seems like it's the typical Boras situation. We get a little bit further along in negotiations. We're getting close to a deal happening, between a team and the player, and then last second, Boras decides to throw some things in there, and then he tries to get another team involved, and if that's not working, to gain some leverage, and it's like we get a mystery team involved out of nowhere to try to drive up that price, or get a opt-out thrown in there is kind of something that we've heard thrown around. We don't really know if that's for sure true or not. But you can imagine why the Giants wouldn't want to do another one of those. They've already gotten burned on that with the Snell situation. And while we've heard that an opt-out might try to have that come after, say, 2 or 3 years, at the end of the day, the Giants are still taking on a lot of money on the front end and potentially 2 draft picks because of the qualifying offer. So it really doesn't make a ton of sense for Posey to want to say, okay, let's take on all this risk, and if our guy is good, then we lose him after 2 or 3 years, and then we got to do this whole free agency game all over again. So I really think Posey's trying to avoid doing that, and it's kind of resulted in a little bit of a standoff with Boras. And I think so far it seems like Posey's just trying to call his bluff, because we see that the Red Sox have made moves for Crochet. I believe today they just signed Patrick Sandoval from the Angels, and you see that they're interested in other arms. You see the Blue Jays are interested in Nick Pivetta. So you're seeing a lot of these teams kind of pivot. Baltimore also got Sugano, the older pitcher from Japan. So you're seeing a lot of these other burn suitors go after arms where you don't really see that with the Giants. You've seen them reported interest in Walker Buehler, and other than that, you haven't really heard much else on the starting pitching front with the Giants. So should be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume it's 100% like a Boras thing that's holding it up. And I honestly, I'll give Posey props for not, taking the bait and, standing firm, because it doesn't seem like he's falling for that tomfoolery. So I got to respect that.
Yeah. I said it last week that I'm a huge believer, as much as I want to see them just get the deal done. I'm just a huge believer, and you don't bid against yourself. And I don't think there's a single person in the Giants organization that believes Burnes has any interest in going to Toronto. So, until a serious other suitor comes in, I just don't see it. So
I do think Baltimore is a little bit more unpredictable. While I do find it hard to believe that they would pay up on that, 8-year, $250 million level that we assume that the Giants are willing to pay. They do have new ownership, so maybe they do get a little bit more aggressive, but it is odd that we haven't really heard them, super aggressive towards re-signing Burnes and Santander, considering that they don't have to give up those picks for the qualifying offer since they were their guys. So I don't know. We'll see. I still lean more towards feeling very confident that the Giants will eventually get this done, and they might have to meet in the middle with the Giants, and they might not be willing to give that opt-out after, say, year 3. That Boras wants. And I honestly don't understand why he wants that, because I believe Burnes would be around 33 to 34 years old by the time that hits. So you're really banking on Burnes having like a Justin Verlander type trajectory if you're wanting him to hit free agency again at that point, or Max Scherzer. And that's just those guys are unicorns. That's super uncommon to see.
I think he's kind of banking on, and like you saw it with Garrett Cole, and they kind of threatened it with Cole. And I know it does give the ability to kind of like renegotiate as you're getting close to that. So if they think, Burnes can get more on the open market, they might be able to get the Giants to slap another year on, or, basically restructure the back end, the rest of that deal, and add like a couple mil. So, I mean, it gives them a little bit of leverage.
I guess, if they were to try and renegotiate, even if he doesn't want to go anywhere. Like the whole Garrett Cole thing this year, where it was pretty clear that Cole didn't want to leave. He just wanted to try and like renegotiate his deal. And the Yankees were like, fine, dude, hit free agency. And they just went, oh, never mind. And they just opted in. So I get kind of the logic, but also it's like, are you really going to opt out? Like, are you really going to throw the ball so well for 3 years that you're, a top 3 or 4 Cy Young candidate every year, that you're going to actually have the guts to opt out at 33 or 34 years old and see what the market gives you? I have my doubt.
Yeah, and just money aside and, value aside, it really comes down to what does Burnes want at this point in his career? Does he want, to go back home and spend the last 7-8 years of his MLB career in his, home state? Does he want to go and try to compete and, potentially contend within, the next year or two? Does he want to go to a place where he can be like the vet and try to, take on more of that mentorship for another up and coming team? It's like, what does he want to do from a personal standpoint? And I think it just makes more sense for him to go back to Cali. So, all the signs are pointing to us. So I'm just kind of waiting for that to drop.
Yeah.
Something I do want to add on to that I haven't really heard people bring up is what a steal they got Logan Webb for on that extension. I know that was something talked about at the time, but 5 years, $90 million for a guy entering, I think it was his age 27 season. And you have Burnes, who's entering, I think, his age 30 season, possibly landing an 8-year, $250 million plus deal. And you got Webb for 5 years, $90 million. You need to take advantage of having a front end of the rotation type arm like that. While he's still there and while he's still in his prime. I mean, he's still young, but man, that has to be one of the biggest bargains in the entire league when you look at what the free agent guys are getting. So hats off to Farhan on that one.
Yeah. And we were all like, and I know I'm big on asset allocation. So I look at the rotation right now. You got, you're paying $25 million to Robbie Ray. You're only paying what, 18, is that coming out, or 19 a year to Webb right now? Mm-hmm. You can afford to pay this big deal because on the back end of your rotation, Farhan kind of dropped the ball and he gave $11 million to Jordan Hicks, who's inevitably going to end up in the bullpen at some point. But you've got 2 pre-arbitration guys that are going to fill out your 4th and 5th spots more than likely. Even if you sign Sasaki, he's going to be on a pre-arb rookie deal for 3 years. So you can absolutely afford to be paying $30-35 million to one of your starters and then have Webb on a cheap deal for at least the next 3. I think he has 3 more years left on his deal now. Yeah. And then, Robbie Ray's only under contract for 2 more years. So a lot of that money's going to come off the books in 2 years.
4 years for Webb, including this year.
Yeah.
Oh, so he has 4. So you have $53 million. You could potentially be paying, like, and I'm going to go on high end here and say Burnes gets 35. You could basically have $53 million allocated to your 2 aces at the front of your rotation.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
George says he gets $12 million this year. What I'm doing, George, is I'm counting it as his tax hit because I believe they usually do the average, salary for the length of the deal. So his tax hit is going to be like $18 million for all 5 of the seasons, even if the actual number is lower for what ownership is paying.
Yeah, if any of you guys want to look this stuff up, I usually go through Spotrac and it breaks it down for you. It'll show you what they're hitting by year, which is more of a number to follow for, like the NFL salary cap. But if you look at right next to it, there's a column and it shows luxury tax. And it's exactly what Cody said. It just averages it out. And it is 18 mil. But it does, if you look at his per year basis, it goes up to 23 and eventually 24 mil at the end of the contract, which still a very good price for what you're getting out of Webb. And even in that last year, I mean, we're looking at, 2028. And by then, imagine what an arm like him is going to get per year. It's going to be way more than 24 million.
Yeah,
it already is.
Yeah, he'd be making closer to 30 right now if he was on the open market. Easily.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's. I mean, do you guys have any concerns as far as getting Burnes done? Like I like what percentage do you think it is that he's going to be with the Giants?
80-20.
Yeah, I would say 80 to 85%. I feel like there's probably like I'd give it like a 10% to the Blue Jays, maybe 12% to the Blue Jays, and then the other to the Orioles. Maybe he liked it there and he wants to go back, but I mean, Baltimore is not really the most desirable area and it's a smaller market. So I feel like with just some of his comments he made before regarding looking at, what the team's futures are going to look like, I do think the Giants do have a little bit of an upper hand as far as the money goes. Now the farm system, they're not going to compete with the Orioles, but the Orioles are also not going to retain guys either. So, or at least most of the more MLB ready guys they have right now.
In my opinion, the only way this deal doesn't get done is if ownership gets cold feet. If they back out and say, you know what, we don't think it's a good idea to pay this much for this type of player at this, at this time. Yeah. That's the only way it doesn't get done, in my opinion. Otherwise, everything else aligns perfectly. The need, the fit, the region, the market, everything matches up perfectly. And obviously the interest is there. To me, it's in ownership's hands right now.
Yeah. I would say I would agree with that like ownership not being willing to fork out the money would be the biggest reason this deal doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And then I would also throw out, like, I think Toronto honestly is like 5%, and it's basically like the Giants back out, and that's why Toronto ends up with them. And the Orioles, I mean, their new ownership, and they definitely aren't going to retain Santander. I think that one's obvious. They're not going to pay to retain a guy that's basically a full-time DH when they have guys like Kobe Mayo coming up, and they're trying to clear space for some of these young players. So I get why they're letting him go, but I would think their ownership was more aggressive in trying to get Burnes, given that they're pretty thin on pitching in their system. Their system is very strong. Obviously, it's one of the best, but they're pretty thin on like legit pitchers coming up right now.
But hey, could I interest you in a Carson Whisenhunt for a Kobe Mayo?
You might be looking at Harrison, honestly, if you're going to make that deal, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but
I would love Kobe
then
Mayo.
It comes into where do you put him? Yeah, I like that guy too. You can mash.
Put him at second. I don't care. Put him at first.
But yeah, so the other way that I could see him going somewhere else would be if a big market team enters it late, like that he's just lingering on the market long enough. I think this is what Boris is really banking on, is Burnes just lingering on the market and some teams circling back because they get, Steve Cohen just sees him sitting there and he goes, you know what, I'm already $50 million over the tax. What's another 35? I think that's Boris's hope. And then it kind of puts the Giants into a panic to up their offer, cave into whatever demands he has. I feel like that's kind of what Boris is hoping. But if the market holds true like it is now, I just don't see him really going to another team.
Boris reminds me of the Grinch this time of the year. Just trying to ruin our Christmas, man.
Except for his heart never grows 3 sizes.
I just wonder if it does come back to bite Boris like it did with Montgomery and Snell last year. I don't know. I really don't think Corbin Burnes is going to be the type that's going to want to hold out for too long. I mean, I can totally see it playing out towards the end of the year. I just don't see this being a situation like Snell and Montgomery. I think too many people around the league took notice to that and aren't going to want to play that game again. Burnes is a guy that never misses time, so I don't think he's going to be wanting to sit around and waiting. And ultimately, if he already kind of has his mind made up on where he wants to go, I don't see why he would want to really keep going back and forth for months on end over a few mil. So ultimately,
what happens if I was gonna say, what happens if Sasaki signs with the Giants? It's not to say the Giants wouldn't still have the money, because they would, but maybe ownership's like, we got this guy making $800,000. Why are we going to pay you? And all of a sudden the Giants just rip their offer out from under Boris and Burnes, and all of a sudden he's stuck with going to Toronto. I mean, he'll be well compensated, but like, does he really want to go sit in Canada for 8 years on crappy teams that are going to battle for fourth? I mean, yeah, I say that as a Giants fan who's watched Giants battle for fourth for 3 years in a row, but still.
Division is a little bit more open though than the AL East. I mean, if you're the Blue Jays, man, and you have your two best players, your franchise guys on expiring deals, I mean, who cares what your infield defense looks like? Those are your two key pieces, and they very well both might be gone. I could totally see that happening, unless they get a deal done with Vladdy this season. But for me, I mean, you got the Padres who are having money issues and do this like almost bigger market version of like what the A's would do, where they're like constantly flipping over their roster and going and trading guys before they're going to get paid, bringing new guys, collecting prospects, shipping them back out, getting veteran players, and doing this whole game. That's not really a sustainable winner right there. You know, they might be good for 2 years at a time, but then they're going to have really bad down years as well when they're constantly flipping over the roster like they have under AJ Preller. So you have that situation, and then the D-backs have a really bad pitching issue. They were one of the best hitting teams in the league last year, but we saw what happened once that couldn't hold up for the whole season. When you get down the home stretch of the season, you really need pitching to come through and in the playoffs, and they don't have that. So, you know, the Giants, they have a big offseason. There's no reason they can't take over those two spots in the division and be a little bit closer to the Dodgers.
Yeah, I do think the second through fourth spots are pretty wide open. And you see it just when the Giants play the Padres and the Diamondbacks. I'd have to go back and look at what their final record was against each. I think they were actually leading the season series against the Padres for most of the year, and then they might have gotten swept the last series against them, and they ended up losing it 5-7 or something. I don't know what the season series finished at for them, but against the Padres, against Arizona, the Giants were super competitive each of the last couple of years. So it's not, they're a lot closer to those two teams. At least it feels like to me. But then, obviously the Dodgers, you're going to have to find a way to beat them more than 3 or 4 times a year, which the Padres and Diamondbacks play the Dodgers way better than the Giants did. So, but I do think you're close to closing that gap.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, I agree, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. We got a couple.
Yeah.
Looks like you starred a few of these.
I did. I wanted to start with this one from George just because it kind of goes into what we were talking about. I don't know if you guys have heard anything regarding meeting with Sasaki. I haven't heard anything. I saw that, that photo that was on X with, I think it was Uematsu and Posey, and they were kind of trying to put 2 and 2 together. But I haven't heard anything, official.
Yeah, it's been quiet, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even really heard of any teams meeting with them. So
I just heard about Chicago today.
We have no clue if that photo was even taken at LAX, because supposedly Sasaki's making everybody do their meetings with him in LA. But yeah, we have no idea. I mean, we've heard the Cubs, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Angels. I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now. I feel like everything's really up in the air with Sasaki. I mean, 1 week it sounds like the Dodgers are the favorite to acquire him. And then the next week, it sounds like he doesn't want to go there because of some of their other Japanese players and him being big on endorsements. So I really don't know what to think at this point. I mean, I feel like the Cubs have done a very good job, recruiting a lot of Japanese guys in the last, say, 5 to 10 years. So they're always on the table. I mean, the Mets are kind of the same way. Obviously, being in New York, he'd have tons of opportunities there. So it's really hard to say where he might end up going.
The one thing that's for sure, though, is we're definitely interested. Posey spoke very, very highly about Sasaki. Mm-hmm. So there's interest there. It's just, everyone's saying that LA is they're the front runners, but who knows?
What would be really lame is if he did what Ohtani did and just went to the Angels and went and rotted there and was like their only good player, and he stuck there for 7-8 years. Like that would be really sad to see.
Right. Just sucks for baseball. Like, it's good for his wallet at the end of the day. Like, he's gonna make a ton of money doing that, but it just sucks for baseball. Like, get him off of the Angels.
I wouldn't mind him being in the AL, but man, that would be just so lame just to see a really fun, exciting young player go there. But I mean, I guess if it's between them and the Dodgers, I'll take it. But
I was gonna say just anywhere but LA. Like, either one of the LA teams, just don't go to either one of those. Anywhere else is cool.
Yeah. How funny would it be if you went to like the Rockies?
Imagine.
I mean, that's one way to be like, I'm the best pitcher on the planet. I'm going to go dominate in Colorado.
Yeah.
Good for you, bro. Team will win 60 games, but
hey, that Coors Field elevation, that doesn't even compare to the SAC elevation. Come on now.
No comment.
Yeah. If you know, you know. All right, what else we got here? We're going to run through these starred ones, then we'll move on to the next topic. A couple of these were...
I did see someone mention Seiya Suzuki, and I've seen that floated around a lot by mainly just Giants fans.
What's this one?
I don't know about you guys, but I really don't see the Cubs being as willing to trade Seiya Suzuki now that Belly's gone. I feel like, why would you at this point? You are trying to build a winner there in Chicago, and he's very good. He's still pretty young. He's in his prime. He's got this year and next year left on his deal at a pretty reasonable dollar amount. And you pair him with Kyle Tucker in the outfield, and you've got a pretty good little, 1-2 punch in your lineup. So I don't see why they would move off of him, and I feel like he'd cost a ton.
He makes way more sense as a deadline deal if Chicago just doesn't come out well.
Yeah,
agreed.
Because the team would get him for a year and a half at that point.
Exactly. And the league, the market has dictated that if you're trying to trade a guy with, that's a rental that's only got a couple months left on his deal, you're just not going to get top prospects back. The market has spoken in that regard for the last couple of years. But if he's got a year and a half left, you can get a really nice piece back if you're willing to trade him at that point. So
yeah, I was going to say I don't see it being a off-season move. If anything, it'd be a deadline move.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And maybe the Giants are right there, and they do call the Cubs if the Cubs have kind of fallen out of it and try to trade for Suzuki at the deadline. But I don't see it right now. Yeah. Love the channel, but what I think they should do first, trade for Luis Robert Jr. and sign Anthony Santander and stick him at first. Your guys' thoughts? I mean, the offense when everyone's on the field would be explosive.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've soured a lot on Luis Robert Jr. Not that I don't like his game, because when he's healthy, he's a top 15 player in baseball.
Easily.
When he's fully healthy. Mm-hmm. The power, speed, defense, he's got it all, really. He does strike out a lot, but everything else, he does at a pretty high level. But the problem is the best ability is availability, and he's barely on the field. And it's just, he might end up only giving you 17 home runs a year because he plays 80, 90 games a year, and that's it. So I don't like the haul you'd have to give up with his contract. And like, Chicago is not going to trade him based off of what he did in 2024. They're going to just be like, he was hurt. Look at 2023. That's what you're trading for. And are you going to give up 2 top 100 guys and then like a couple other high-end toolsy prospects for him? You're going to basically destroy your system in order to trade him or trade for him for a guy that may or may not be healthy on an annual basis. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, if the price is right, I'm all for it. But the thing is, the price won't be right. They're going to want way too much. And it's just too big of a gamble. But I love him as a player.
It's kind of the same way I felt about Crochet. I was like, I just don't feel like there's enough of a track record there to trade for a guy like that for what it's going to cost. These guys are young. They're, relatively cheap, and they're super talented, but they haven't really put it all together all at once consistently. And the Giants farm system has some talent, but it just plain and simple isn't deep enough for that. We mentioned it, I think, last week, and you have a team like the Cubs, for instance, who had at the time before the Kyle Tucker trade, they had 10 top 100 prospects. That is nuts. And the Giants barely have 2 guys in there, and a lot of people could honestly question Tibbs being in there just because he kind of struggled out of the gate last year after being drafted. So the Giants just don't really have the ammo, and I don't think you can afford to trade Eldridge for anything other than a proven superstar, and that's just not something that's on the table right now.
Yeah. Like I know somebody, it might have been Giants Dave, floated it. Would you trade Eldridge for Vladdy straight up with an extension in hand for Vladdy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would.
Exactly. Like
with an extension, yes. I mean, like you're hoping Eldridge becomes that type of player. I mean, the guy is a proven 30 home run hitter with a high average, good on base skills. I mean, that's that's all you can really ask for. You have to take the proven talent at some point. But again, big if, you don't know what the extension would look like. You don't know if he'd be willing to stay here. There's just too many ifs unless it was like agreed upon as a condition with the trade. Yeah,
I agree. This will be the last one because it's going to actually kind of tie into our topic because, this video, it's, our main topic for this is kind of what needs do the Giants still have and, what can they realistically expect to accomplish this offseason? Because, the reality is every team's got needs and almost every team is not going to fill every single need. It's just not really possible unless you just have some ridiculously stacked homegrown talent that's going to fill all these needs internally where you only have 1 or 2. It's pretty difficult to fill every single need. You're always going to have a weakness on the roster. So we're going to kind of like look through those needs because they did cross off one. They crossed off the biggest one, arguably, at shortstop, which also addressed some other stuff, defense, power, a little bit of speed because he did steal 20 bags last year. But they still got quite a few on the roster. So we're going to kind of talk about that, and we're going to talk about what we can, different avenues they can go and where we can see them, filling some of these at least, and what they should prioritize of those needs. So, and where I'm going with that is because Cole asked Walker to Astros, Goldie to San Francisco. So, you look at the Giants roster right now, and I mean, I think that there's some pretty big blatant needs positionally. And then there's some, some, we'll call them philosophical things I need to address a little bit. Like they could obviously use a little bit more contact. They could always use more speed. They could use, a little bit more power. Obviously, Adames is going to help, but he doesn't fix that issue. But I think positionally, like there's 2 really blatant needs on this roster right now. I would say you need a front end starting pitcher and you need a first baseman. And you could honestly, and you kind of need another corner outfielder. Like I would say those are the 3 kind of obvious needs. And some of these you might be able to fill internally And I think that's where we're going to kind of talk about, which ones you maybe focus on internal solutions and which ones do you look externally to try and fill the need.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. I think personally, first base is more something I want to fill just for this year until we really know when Eldridge is going to be ready. Just having that short term plug and play guy, like Cole mentions, Goldie, it could be Santana, it could be a guy you go and trade for, like I've mentioned, Yandy Diaz. I just think that's a little bit more of a priority after they fill that second starting pitcher role, as opposed to, like right field or left field, because out there you have a lot more options. Yes, you still do have Yaz. There's been rumors floated around that a lot of people have trade interest in him, but even after that, you have a lot of guys you need to get a little bit of a book on. Basically, you have Graham McRae out there. You still have Elliot Ramos. You have Jung-Hoo Lee. Eventually, Luciano might go out there. Probably not going to see him for a while because he's getting moved to the outfield. But you have a lot of different guys that you can really plug and play out there that I think you need to give more of an opportunity to. But as far as first base goes, you just really don't have anybody in the system other than Eldridge. And again, we don't know how long he's going to be in Sacramento for this year. Based on Posey's comments, they're not going to rush that at all, and they will take the whole year if they need to.
So here's my thing, because I agree with that completely. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That is literally what you're dealing with the Wilmer Flores, Lamont Wade Jr., duo at first base. You know what you're going to get, and it's nothing special. You got an up-and-coming superstar in Bryce Eldridge, who is more than likely, you might make an appearance this season, but more than likely won't be till the following year. So you're going to have at least a 1-year gap between, your current situation to your future franchise player. And that's where Goldschmidt makes perfect sense. I mean, we floated this idea around months ago, but it makes perfect sense. If you can land Goldschmidt on a 1-year, $12 to $15 million deal, let him be that bridge, let him be that mentor for Bryce, give you some stability at that position, get you some pop at that position from a guy that notoriously rakes at Oracle Park, get you a guy that drives and runs. Heck, I pointed out today to some dude on X, Goldschmidt's 37 years old. He stole 11 bags last year. You know how many steals Lamont Wade Jr. has in his last 4 years combined? 11. So it's like you're going to get production out of multiple different aspects in Goldschmidt's game rather than just the pop. And yes, he had a down year last year because he's getting up there in age. It's still a hell of a lot better than what we've been getting out of the first base position over the last few years. So I'm all for it, making that type of move. And I think it speaks numbers based on, what you're saying that the needs are on the team, because I can agree 100%. First base, right field are two of the biggest ones at this time. And the fact that two of the names that are being floated that are on the trade market are Lamont Wade Jr. and Mike Yastrzemski. So just the fact that we're viewing those two positions as, needs on the team, and Buster Posey is already kind of floating them available in trade talks, that just speaks numbers. So it's a win-win across the board if you're able to, bring Goldie in, free up some of that space on the roster. I was texting you guys about this earlier today. If you move a guy like Yaz, you can go internal and plug in either a McRae or a Matos in the outfield, or even the two of them up there. And then that means Luciano, who's transitioned to the outfield, he gets more consistent playing time in Sacramento with less competition in his way there. It's a win-win across the board. It frees up, space for the young guys, gives you some, extended looks at Luciano in Sacramento, gets you some stability and a nice little bridge at first base with Goldschmidt until Eldridge comes up. It just makes too much sense. So that's my little rant for the night.
Pop quiz: where would Goldie have finished in stolen bases on the Giants last season?
I'm guessing top 3.
You are guessing correctly.
Yeah, I was gonna say like 4 or 5, just trying to be a little bit nicer.
Is it
He would
3?
have been number 3 behind Fitz and Chapman.
A 37-year-old Goldschmidt. That's insane.
37-year-old Goldschmidt would have finished third with the same amount of stolen bases as the guys who finished fourth and fifth. Because Ramos and McRae had 6 and 5. They were your third and fourth. Those two combined for 11.
That's insane.
That's how pathetic the Giants' run game was the last season and the last few seasons. So hopefully we change that with Fitz a little bit and Adames.
But hey, we had 47 coaches last season, so
when you have more coaches than stolen bases, you got a problem.
Good Lord, man.
Yeah, no. So they, I mean, I agree pretty much with both what you guys just said. Like I think outfield is the one that makes the most sense to finish or to fill internally. Matos and McRae, you have two cheap young players that are, are they ready? I mean, that's arguable. I mean, I think Matos has enough at bats now in AAA that you would just want to basically put him out there. It's his last option year and hey, sink or swim, kid. I personally am in the camp of I would have Matos out there every single day. I'd put him in left and shift Ramos to right because measurables are similar, but it's pretty clear that Ramos has better instincts and gets a better first step and jump on the ball. So I would rather Ramos be in right field, but I would put Matos out there every day, at least till like the All-Star break. Just sink or swim, kid. And if he just falls on his face and it's proven like, hey, he's not a player, I'm putting McRae out there the rest of the way. And and I'd call it good. Like I would just, that's how I would go into the season. That would be my plan going into the season because I love McRae's potential. Like I think he's got one of the most exciting, we'll call him package of tools or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. He's got one of the most exciting skill sets in the Giants system with the speed. He's got some nice power in the bat. His defense is phenomenal. The base stealing potential is amazing. I mean, if for anybody that listened to the Skaters on Baseball channel, they had Grant McRae on their channel, I think a week or so ago. Yeah. And McRae, he flat out said, he's like, I think I could steal 60 bags in a season. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's more than the Giants stole all season last year. So I love what he could bring, but this is a guy that has struck out like 30% or more of the time at basically every level. And the way they're talking about him as, like he understands the importance of putting it in the play. Posey wants him to put it in play. Like that's not something you just fix in one off season. So I think they're going to be doing some mechanical stuff with him. I think he's going to have to it's going to take a lot of reps. He didn't get a ton of reps in Sacramento last season. I mean, even if this is a guy that basically started in AA, went to AAA, and then was up in the majors before the season ended. So like he doesn't have a ton of upper minors experience. So I think it would be beneficial for him to go down to Sac, work on the approach, and then be ready in the second half. And, we'll see where Matos is at that point. But I think Matos is the more, he has the more major league ready approach now. He does need to tweak some things. We've commented a lot on that in previous episodes, but I think it's the bat to ball skills and everything. Like it'll play more right away.
Yeah.
I think you could also potentially, platoon Matos and McRae if you really have, say Matos comes out of the gate and he's struggling and he's your opening day left fielder. Go and platoon them, do a righty-lefty split out there and just see how it goes and try to play to their strengths for a little bit until one of them kind of separates themselves and just kind of go that route. But ultimately, you can afford to do that for the first half of the season and kind of just see how the team looks and really evaluate what you have in-house. If you don't want to go that route in free agency and bring a veteran guy in out there. And then you're looking at an extremely athletic outfield and a pretty athletic lineup in general. I mean, almost 1 through 9, you're going to have guys with speed up and down the lineup other than first base if, Wade and Wilmer stick there and pretty much Bailey. And then the rest of your team has some speed and a little bit of a threat on the bases. So I'd really like, if they go that route, I'd really like to see them work on their situational hitting and their bunting and really take advantage of that speed, especially at the bottom of the lineup when you're flipping that over and you're having guys like Adames and Ramos and Chapman come up with a little power. I think they really need to put a bigger emphasis on that, because I know they've been saying for about 2-3 years now that they're going to get younger and more athletic. I think now is finally the time. Like, let's execute that and see what it looks like.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I look at some of the guys on the current roster, like especially a Matos or a Ramos, and if they're playing every day, I don't see any reason why those guys couldn't swipe 15 bags under the current rules. Like,
yeah,
we're not. I don't think they're going to be a blazer on the paths and just be steal a ton. But like, I don't see why they couldn't go like 15 for 20 swiping bags on the season. Like, the rules are just so much in your favor, and they have enough speed to do it. I mean, you look at a guy like Adames, who's 50th percentile sprint speed, and he swiped 21 bags. A guy like, I'm pretty sure Ramos and Matos are both in the 66 to 70th percentile or something like that. It's like, and now, first step, quickness, acceleration, all that stuff matters obviously more, but it's like, you clearly have enough speed. You should be able to swipe a few of these. So,
yeah,
but,
for sure.
But so now I'm going to look at the financials of this. So I pulled up COTS to pull this up, and they currently have the Giants at 199.6 something million dollars on their, relative to the tax. That's factoring in all the, player, or the employee incentives or benefits and all this weird stuff and player benefits that, get added to the tax cost. So they, according to that, have about $41.3 million under the tax. So if we're kind of looking at their needs and where they can fill, and I wouldn't say that they're going to really be able to use the full, 41.3, because you are going to want to be a bit under that. And the reason I gave these guys earlier for me personally is I would want to be at least like anywhere from $5 to $10 million under the tax going into the season, because I do think ownership has like a hard stance of, we are not going over the tax again, because you do pay stiffer penalties. Now, they only paid like $2 million in penalties last season, but it does get stiffer year to year. And I do believe that they want to make a huge swing on a Tucker or a Vladdy next season. So I think they want to get under it because they know they might be blowing past it next season. So if you're going to do that, you want us to be a little bit under, because let's say this team is competitive and right in the middle of the playoff hunt, you're going to want to be able to add a player. Like if you're trying to trade for something at the deadline to give your team some help, you're going to want to be able to afford that. Maybe second base isn't working out the way you hope, and the Jays are floating Bo Bichette out there and he's having a good year, and you're trying to, he's making 17 million this year by the deadline. You'd be owing him like 6, 7, I don't know, something like that. You got to be able to take on some of that money. So I think you're going to want to at least, have $6-7 million of room. So if you are going to try and address your starting rotation first, Burnes pretty much eats up that entire wiggle room. Like, I don't know what his final number is going to be, but it seems like it could be anywhere from like 30 to 35, depending on who you're talking to. So, I mean, I'm guessing it'll probably be like 32-ish. Like, he's going to get more AAV and more money than Fried, and more years probably. But, I kind of wonder if the Giants might like try and tack an extra year on to try and get that AAV down a little bit. But I could see them trying to get Burnes. And then I think first base has got to be your next priority, like you guys said. But where, going and signing a Santana or a Goldschmidt gets tricky is, for Goldschmidt, I mean, if he's going to make $12 million, we'll say that even on the low end, you're going to have to move some money. And, obviously they've talked about trading Yaz. They've talked about trading Wade. They've talked about trading Taylor Rogers. They have options. So like, you're going to have to do some financial gymnastics here and kind of move some guys around a little bit. So what are your guys' thoughts on this?
Dude, you can flip Yaz and Rogers, and then you'll be able to afford Goldie and have money left over. So, I mean, you guys know how I feel. Like George just said, Yaz, Wade, Rogers, Wilmer, Murphy, those are all guys that I would trade for a half-eaten bag of stale beef jerky. Like, I'm cool with that, man. Let me save the money. Give me that financial flexibility. Give me the option to upgrade either internally or externally. Like, I'm all for that. So, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's a no-brainer. That's the route that I would go. I would absolutely look into flipping at least most, if not all, of those 5 names that I just listed, and then pursuing upgrades at that point. Because, like I've said for months, hanging on to a guy like, Yaz or Rogers or Wilmer or, Lamont or whatever, hanging on to guys like that can be the make or break between landing a guy like Burnes. Like, if money's really that tight and you're not willing to go and meet that asking price because you got that little gap between or before you hit the CBT number, it's like flipping one of those guys takes care of that problem 100%. Allows you to stay under there and be able to afford a guy like Burnes. So I don't know, man. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean the core 4, if you want to call them that, of Wade, Wilmer, Taylor Rogers, and Yaz, I have it about 28 to 30 million that you'd be saving. And I mean, honestly, I look at it this way. It makes no sense when you have young guys that need more playing time to be spending almost, $20 million or over $20 million on 2 guys that are basically reserves. You have Rogers, who isn't throwing high leverage innings, and you have Yaz, who really should be a 4th outfielder. And I just don't think it's money well spent spending $9 million on a guy that you ideally would like to have in a reserve role. Maybe it, like Cole says, as a defensive replacement late in games. So for me, it's like those 2 alone are pretty easy to float out in trades, because out of that core 4, all those guys are on expiring deals, and Rogers and Yaz have a ton of trade value. I wouldn't say, we're going to get some great prospect in return, but those are guys that other teams will covet, and they could easily be shipped out. Now, Wilmer obviously was horrible last year, was hurt most of the year as well. But at the end of the day, he still has a little bit of a track record, and he's only making about $3.5 million this year. And then he's on an expiring deal as well. He's a guy you could see someone like maybe Pittsburgh or a smaller market team like that be interested in, that could say, hey, let's take a chance on this guy. He's not going to cost us anything. Has a little bit of pop. We kind of know what to expect. I mean, we've seen what they've thrown out there in years past, Connor, Joe, Rowdy Tellez, guys like that. So you could absolutely see a team like that go after Wilmer. And then Wade is like the souped up version of Wilmer. He's, I would say, probably a little bit more athletic and also is a little bit more steady of a hitter when he is healthy. So, I mean, I don't see any of those guys being hard to trade as long as you're not expecting a haul in return.
Yeah. I'd say and you guys know the move I want, obviously. And anybody that watched my last video knows the move I want. Because if it was up to me right now, I'd get the Burnes deal done, whenever that happens, but I'd get the Burnes deal done. That's going to be the majority of the money I'm forking out right now. And my follow-up move would be trading for Spencer Steer, because you can put him at first base, and he's an above-average defensive first baseman. Like, if you look at the eye test, he looks athletic over there. He's got a really good arm. He's, he played the corner infield, so like he's pretty natural there overall. Like, he keeps improving. But out of the first base position, he's going to give you probably 20-plus homers, nearly 60 extra base hits, and he's going to steal you 20-plus bags. And he is going to cost you. He's on his last pre-arbitration year. And the reason I'm bringing it up, because a lot of people might go, why the hell would the Reds trade him? Well, he's already getting floated out there. Apparently, they've made him and their closer Diaz available. So, and the Reds are looking for pitching, especially young pitching. What do the Giants have? A ton of young pitching. So trade from your strength to get him after you sign Burnes, because once you sign Burnes, you can make it a lot easier to stomach something like that. And you basically get Burnes and a starting first baseman for what, like $33 million at the end of the day. And you still are in that range underneath. And then now you're making, now you have the ability to move some of these guys, the Yastrzemskis, the Wades, the Taylor Rogers, the Wilmers. You have the, flexibility to move those guys to try and upgrade other spots on your roster, whether that's, trying to get another reliever in, or, you want to upgrade your bench a little bit in some way. Although I would say, Wade is a solid enough bench player. I would be fine there. Whatever you want to, move these guys around for, get a better backup catcher for Bailey, somebody that might be making a couple of $1 million. You got Murphy, who he's making $4 million, but you're probably going to try and move off of him.
Please.
Yeah. Go get yourself a left-handed bat that maybe you put in the DH spot. Maybe all of a sudden now you can move Yastrzemski and Taylor Rogers, and you can afford to make a trade for Josh Naylor for a year and just DH him. There's so much flexibility that you have. And then the biggest reason I like Steer, and I told you guys this obviously, is there's a situation where, like, best case scenario, because this is kind of why the Reds are looking to trade him right now, is that they're struggling with where do they play him, because they have kind of a lot of young outfielders. They have a lot of young infielders. They're kind of struggling with where do they put this guy, even though he's kind of one of their better hitters. Like, honestly, he was probably like their third or fourth best hitter last season. The Giants next season, like, let's say there's a situation where Eldridge takes off and he's like, this guy's our first baseman. And then while you're playing Steer at first, most of the year, Matos or McRae or someone takes off. So you're like, cool, we're set in the outfield. And then when Tucker and Vladdy are free agents, you go hard after them and one of them agrees to come. Well, then if Steer has a great year, you can trade him next year when he still has 3 years of control. And if he has a really good year, you're selling high on him, unlike the Reds, who are selling low on him.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you probably get more than you actually gave up for him. So it's a move that you can make that, yes, there is a prospect cost to it, but there's also a potential to recover more than you gave up if you do need to move him later on. Mm-hmm. And also, he's just so inexpensive to fill a hole from a financial standpoint.
$800,000 against the luxury tax. So that's why after, this Burnes deal gets done potentially, you got to be aggressive on the trade market. And that's why I'm very excited to see what Manassian can pull off, since that's supposed to be kind of a specialty of his with that pro scouting background. So I would love a Steer trade. And then going back to what David's asking, Steer was like a 4, 5, 6 type hitter for the Reds. He could easily do the same thing for the Giants. Honestly, I wouldn't mind batting a guy like that 2 or 3 just because of the speed at the top, and have him behind a guy like Lee. I don't think would be a bad move at all. We've kind of heard Melvin's comments that a lot of us laughed at, where he wants to hit Wade first and Lee third. I don't agree with that at all. Personally, I don't think Lee is a guy that you want to be up with guys on base. I think he's way better as a table setter. We've got a short sample size of him with runners on, and I don't think that's the best spot for him. And he's not going to hit for a ton of power, so I personally wouldn't want him at 3-hole. But Steer gives you that speed, and he gives you a little bit of on-base skills, and he gives you the power. So, yeah, and like Cole said, Lee at leadoff makes just way more sense for the team. So
I wouldn't have Wade lead off in my rec league softball team. I'm sorry.
It's like the beer league softball guys that are station to station.
Yeah,
the ball's off the fence and they're just like pulling into first.
He would be the guy that takes like the first 4 pitches, waits till he gets to a full count to swing the bat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say he's the guy that looks to draw a walk and the slope.
Yeah, it's like, bro, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah. Now, okay, so to address this, Jared, I 100% agree. The Giants need more lefty bats. Where I would go with that is looking around on the market. I don't know if that's something they're realistically going to be able to fill this offseason. You can with a guy like Santana, he switch hits. That's an option. I like Steer more because of what the totality of what he brings. He brings the speed, he brings the power, and he's super cheap and cost controlled for 4 years. So to me, it's more important to just get good players and then figure out the lefty situation, as you can. And this is kind of where we were talking, like they're not going to be able to fill every need. Naylor, like I said, if you do make that move, maybe you can move a couple people and then make a trade for Naylor still and then have him DH. Then you can fill that lefty bat with power in your lineup. So there are some things they could do. This is just one of those that I would kind of lean in on getting good productive players and then worry about, balancing things like lefty righty stuff later on.
And here's the thing. It's not like we don't have any lefties. We have Jung-Hoo Lee, who's a lefty. You got Grant McCray, who's a lefty. You got Patrick Bailey, who the only side of the plate he can hit is lefty. You've got your number one prospect is a lefty. So it's not like you don't have anybody, man. Like, that if all goes well, mid to end of this upcoming season, 4 of the bats in your lineup would ideally be left-handed. So it's not like you're complete SOL from that side of the play.
And Steer hit righties pretty well last season. He struggled a little bit against lefties last season, but the year before he had like a 928 OPS against them because somebody asked, like, can this guy hit lefties? Because they looked at just his 2024 stats, and you go back to 2023 and he absolutely crushed them. So it's like, yeah, he can. He had a bad year. It was a down year for him. And Adames has reverse splits. He actually hits righties better than he does lefties. So I'm not as concerned, with the whole like lefty righty thing. As Dan just mentioned, when Eldridge is up, hopefully that's the big lefty bat. You are going to need another one. That's why I'd almost argue that next year in free agency, Tucker is actually a better fit than Vladdy. But, from an age and production standpoint, you'd probably lean Vladdy anyway. But just from a roster fit, Tucker would probably be a better fit. But, we'll kind of see. We'll see if Grant McCray takes off. If he does, like Dan said, there's one of your lefty bats right there. Same with Eldridge. So they have some people.
I was just looking at lefty outfielders that are available right now. And after Santander, you're looking at Alex Verdugo and Jesse Winker. Those are basically the top options that are out there still. So not bad players, but I mean, it's just kind of a tough spot the Giants are in. Yes, if you're like truly committed to winning now, a guy like Winker might not be a terrible option, although I don't know if you guys saw Winker and Adames's interaction in the playoffs last year. That might not be the greatest idea. They kind of wanted to go out to the parking lot.
They could go meet in the parking lot every day.
They'd have a ton of room for activities out there. Let's just say that.
If they sign Winker, I'm 100% posting on X. I'm going to put Winker and Adames's face over Brennan and Dale. Where they're like, did we just become best friends?
Yes. So, I mean, those are your options. If you're really committed to just having a veteran team and trying to go for it now, then sure. It's just those aren't necessarily like, other than Santander, those aren't really guys you want to block young talent with because, Winker and Verdugo are probably guys that are going to get a shorter length deal and probably not going to get a crazy amount of money. So those aren't really guys you want to pivot to unless you really just don't believe in what you have in house. And I don't think that's the case.
And let's say they move on from Yaz. Like I'm looking at their, who's reasonably tradable in there. Like, let's say they move Yaz, like they trade for Steer, they sign Burnes. Who knows what happens with the Sasaki situation, but like, let's say those are the two big moves, and then they're trying to make, move some money around to try and make another move. So let's say they trade Yaz and eat some of Taylor Rogers' deal and move him. Do you guys have any issue just having like a, primarily Wade Encarnacion platoon at DH?
No, I don't.
I'd be fine with Wade in a DH spot where A, he probably stays healthy, and B, I don't care about his defense at that point. And if you get these other guys, I mean, as long as Melvin's not leading him off, just kick him down in the lineup and let him hit 6th or 7th or something like that and call it good. I'd be fine with that.
I could live with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just I don't want Wade being a full-time player. I thought it was super unrealistic when they did that last year. I mean, we saw him 2 seasons ago. He did play in a ton of games, but he was, I mean, if you actually watch the games, he was not healthy, and that's why his play declined. And that's why oftentimes you see him start out with like obviously low power output, but you see him with almost like all-star level numbers for about a month and a half. And then it's like one time going 1st to 3rd, he pulls a hammy, and then he's basically garbage the rest of the season. And you're just hoping like hell that he takes a walk.
It's so, like I said, bro, definition of insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to, Posey would need, honest to God, Posey needs to like step aside with Wade and be like, dude, you need to be the guy that hit 18 home runs. Like, we don't need you up there drawing walks. Like, we're bumping you down in the lineup. I mean, he hit a ball like 460 feet in Atlanta last season. Like, dude, you have power. You're not, you should not be a punch and Judy hitter up there. Like, go up there and swing with some authority. Like, try and drive the ball. You work so many counts with count leverage. Like, it drives me absolutely off a wall how often he works a 2-0, 3-1, 3-0 count, and then he just takes like a grooved fastball, especially when there's runners in scoring position. Like, it drives me insane. So, like, you have great plate discipline, but actually, like, go up there and like look to do damage occasionally, please, because you have the power to do it. So I think he'd be, if he could like change his mindset at the plate and not just be so hyper focused on getting on base. Like, if he could just change his mindset, like, I actually think he could be a pretty damn good like 6 or 7 hitter where he would probably drive in a decent amount of runs. But it's just like, it's a mindset thing with him.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to blame the whole thing on, Violi and Guerrero and all these guys, but I really do believe it's an approach thing. And I've discussed this with many people. It really looks like he's guessing pitch and he's guessing location, because there's no other reason why you should be taking a belt high fastball over the middle of the plate in a 2-strike count. Like, that just doesn't happen unless you're guessing pitch and guessing location. And why the hell aren't you swinging when the ball is over the middle of the plate? Especially a dead red fastball. I mean, we saw it with even Chapman numerous times, and that's why I do not buy the excuses that we got from a lot of people that were defending these coaches that we had. You had so many of these coaches, and for some reason, all these players have the same mindset, but then we have people that are blaming the players and the crap players we had on our team for these issues. And it's like, okay, when every hitter 1 through 9 has the same exact approach, it's very clear that they are being taught what to do. I mean, yes, the players can have their own approach, but when it's the whole team, it's clearly a philosophical thing. And I do think we'll see a little bit of that change this year.
Yeah. Nick says Encarnacion's swing is not for Oracle, doesn't pull the ball. He's not the answer in his opinion. I actually agree with that. But I do think he can have success, because if you look at like Posey, for instance, his swing wasn't built for Oracle. His swing was built for like Milwaukee or Yankee Stadium, where the power alleys in right center. Like, Posey didn't really have a swing built for Oracle because he liked to go the other way. My pushback would be, he actually showed success even in Oracle. He has the power to center. I mean, Elliot Ramos, another guy, his swing in his game is not really designed for Oracle. Now, he did improve pulling the ball, but he hit a bunch of home runs to center field and to right center, right field. Like, he hit a ton to center field. That's not traditionally good for Oracle, but he has the power to do it. And I would say Encarnacion has the power to get him. Now, his power numbers are going to get hurt in Oracle Park. Like, it's not an ideal situation for him, but I don't think like we shouldn't give him an opportunity still. Like, I think he should still have the opportunity. And, yeah, he might not have as many home runs. He might hit, quite a few doubles because he puts a bunch off the fence. I don't have a problem with that. Like, I care about extra base hits total. Like, I care more about that than I do home runs. So if he goes up there and gives them a bunch of extra base hits, I'm all for it. I don't care if they leave the yard or not.
Yeah, and I mean, if he hits a crap ton of doubles, I mean, we'll take that. Ultimately, you need it. It really comes down to more power, and if you can't get that, at least be going extra bases. We can't have the Wilmer Wade combo where it's single walk strikeout every time, just 3 outcomes. It's let's get a little bit more extra base hitting going on and a little bit more pop in the lineup. And ultimately, if some home games he has to go the other way and he's just drilling the gap, that is totally fine. That's just something that's lacked. And I know he's going to be a little bit slower on the bases, but ultimately, if he just takes advantage of that gap where he does like to hit it a lot, and we saw that in SAC, that'll be just fine. It just, for him, it really comes down to swing decisions and not striking out so much.
Yeah.
That's the bigger concern with Encarnacion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's a team-wide thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not going to fix overnight, but hopefully that is something we do see an improvement from, like with this new regime in place. I think it is going to be an organizational philosophy that, battling with 2 strikes and getting the ball in play, those things are going to matter to this new front office. And, it doesn't change overnight, but I do think we're going to see this. I think it's going to start improving at least next season. And as the years go, we're going to see, you're going to see, I'm not going to say the Giants are going to turn in the Dodgers, but you're going to see more of that mindset where they don't give on any pitches. The Dodgers fight every pitch, every at bat, every game. And, I may hate the Dodgers, but I respect the way they battle in the box nightly. So hopefully we see more of that out of the Giants going forward.
Yeah.
Nick asked a question: if you guys are going to swing a deal for Vlad Jr., where does he play exactly? Is he a DH or does he play first? And maybe Bryce plays the outfield. Yeah, I mean, I think both of those are on the table. I don't think you're going to trade for him, honestly. I'm not sure if they could get that trade done without including Bryce. And I frankly, unless there's an extension in hand beforehand, I don't think that Bryce should even be in the discussion, because too many other teams are going to probably offer that big time prospect that the Giants should not be willing to, because they don't have the depth behind them. So if you have them both, it depends on what you get, out of the rest of your prospects, out of the Matos, McRae's, and everybody. Because if there's a hole in left field, like if all those guys fall on their face and you have a big hole in the outfield, I think Eldridge could go out and play left field in Oracle Park. Like, it's going to be an adjustment, but I think he could do it and develop into at least a decent left fielder. He has the athleticism and the arm.
I will continue to refer to Pat Burrell and Aubrey Huff playing left field at Oracle.
Yes.
That has not changed.
Yes.
That part of the park has not changed. If they can manage it, it wasn't pretty. And Michael Morse. And we could probably throw out a couple other names too. So if they can manage it, a tall, young, athletic player like Bryce can. And you just kind of worry about that problem when it comes up. If you can actually get a guy like Vlad in here. Yeah, Belt too. He did play out there a little bit.
You know what I file that under? I file that under first world problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So, yeah.
And I mean, shit, if a more athletic player like Gregor Blanco, Cody's personal favorite, can screw up out there, anything's on the table.
That guy. That guy.
Yeah, Cody,
was so lucky they won that World Series. That's all I can say.
Cody, you should rock the Blanco beard next year. Just a little chin strap.
Little chin strap.
You should do it, bro.
Just wear a shark fin. Just,
in honor of your king.
My comrade. God. Yeah, at chat, we all have that player that we just can't stand, even though everybody loves him.
I got like
Gregor Blanco was that guy for me.
Posey's gonna watch this show and he's gonna hire Gregor Blanco tomorrow as their new outfield coach.
Isn't he already with the organization in some kind of like scouting?
I think he is
something. He is. I don't even know, man. God,
he'll be our bunting instructor.
Hey, you know what? He could get a bunt down. I will give him that.
Somebody's got to fill the Alyssa Nacken role.
Jesus. If we sign Burnes, do you think they look into trading Robbie Ray, and who would be partner or player? I mean, I think the Giants would love to trade Robbie Ray and get out from under that contract for the next 2 years, but I don't know if I couldn't tell you who would actually take it without the Giants eating significant money. I mean, we just saw what the Cubs had. I mean, the Cubs only ended up eating $5 million for Bellinger, but the Cubs, he's only guaranteed to be under contract 1 more year. Like, he could opt out. And in Yankee Stadium, like, he very well could hit 30 next season and opt out. Like, it would not shock me. Yeah. But Ray, there's no opt out at this point. He already opted in for the last 2 years. I mean, who's out there really looking for pitching? I mean, is Toronto desperate enough to trade for Robbie Ray? Like, who's really looking?
I mean, Baltimore, Toronto, Chicago, I think still is. Yeah. Like you said, Cincinnati, but they're not going to want to go after someone like Ray. That just makes no sense for them.
He'd give up so many home runs in that park, I feel like. Well, maybe if he gets right, maybe he wouldn't, but I don't know. Like, he has always been kind of prone to the homers, and playing in Cincinnati, just in the NL West parks, like, that seems like a bad idea.
Just send him to Coors.
The Rockies are always looking for pitching. Here you go.
Yeah. He might have a 7.4 ERA by the end of the year, but hey, it's all good.
Tyro Estrada would have a 1,200 OPS against Robbie Ray in Coors Field. Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I'll be honest. I actually, because the money is manageable. It's the $23 million cap hit for the Giants the next 2 years. It's not terrible. And even if you're paying Burnes, like, I think if you can make the money, like, unless you're just desperate to get out of the money, like, I personally think Robbie Ray is going to be a solid pitcher the next couple of years if he's healthy. Yeah. Like, I think you're going to look at a guy that gives you 160, 170 innings and, throws to like a 3.7 ERA, something like that, 3.7, 3.8 ERA, which, yeah, is it a $23 million pitcher? Well, I mean, maybe now it is. I mean, look at some of the deals these guys are signing, but I think you're going to get a better pitcher next season than what we saw for the last 10 starts or whatever he gave us last season coming off Tommy John.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being on record multiple times talking to you guys about it and telling other people, like, do not expect anything out of Ray all season. Like, he is going to come back and he's probably going to be bad and his control's probably going to suck. I mean, anytime you're getting, a couple months out of a Tommy John guy, just expect nothing. Do not expect a guy to be keeping his ERA in the low 4s or the high 3s and giving you innings. Like, it's going to be all over the place. You might get one good outing and then you're going to get some terrible outings. And it was like the same thing with Alex Cobb too. It's, you got a guy in his late 30s coming off of a hip surgery. Don't expect the guy to be healthy. So I think we could see a much improved Robbie Ray. Usually that's what you see out of these TJ guys. You see them come back after getting a little bit of work in at the end of a year, and then they come back looking like a completely different guy once they have a full, spring training under their belt to actually get their mechanics in order and get their secondary pitches down. So
his fastball was still pretty effective. He just didn't know where it was going.
Yeah. I mean, I thought his stuff looked good. It's not like his stuff wasn't moving. He just, like you said, he literally didn't know where anything was going, and that's super common. So
I think the one thing a lot of people forget with Tommy John guys is like these guys have to basically relearn how to throw a ball. Like it's not like a lower body injury where they can sit there and like throw on the side or something and they can still do some of the work. Like you're like rebuilding your arm strength and having to like relearn how to throw. So, as Ricky pointed out, like the command just goes away and they have to get a feel for all these different pitches and they have to get, a feel for their command and all that different stuff. So, like Ricky said, the stuff looked good. He just didn't know where it was going. I think we're going to see a better pitcher next season. I don't think he's going to be Cy Young Robbie Ray, but I think he can be an effective 3 or 4 starter in a rotation and, help you win games. Like it'd be fine. He'll eat up innings and help you at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say even more so for a guy like Ray who leans heavy on a curveball and he's coming over the top, because a lot of times that snapping motion is like one of the scariest things for guys coming back. It's not the fastball and the velo. It's getting that command down and that snapping motion, really whipping your arm coming down when you're a guy like Ray who's kind of coming over the top like that. So I definitely think he has a very good chance of being a really solid middle of the rotation guy for us this year.
Yeah. George, what I will say is if you somehow, if the Giants somehow walk away with Burnes and Sasaki, and the A's called you and said, hey, I'll take Robbie Ray because trying to get over, I'd be like, yeah, sure, dude. I would absolutely trade him in that situation. But I think right now I kind of lean you need the innings. And you do need some vets in your rotation. You can't, as much as we all want to see all these kids pitch, like we can't go into next season relying on Jordan Hicks and Kyle Harrison and Hayden Birdsong and Landon Roop and Tristan Beck to like all be like playing huge roles in the rotation. So I do kind of think like you do need a guy that can give you some innings in a vet role that's a little more reliable. And then as these other young guys, like if they establish themselves and they look really good, yeah, maybe next season you trade Robbie Ray next offseason. If you can.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly like to trade from, some of your young pitching depth this year and, like you said, get a guy like Steer in here. Because I think in the long run, you're just ultimately not going to be able to get rid of or get the chance to play all these young pitchers. And I would just really hate to see them go to waste and just rot in AAA, and then they get to the point where they have no value left, and then you're just letting them ultimately walk for free. So I definitely think they need to jump on that the second this Burnes deal hopefully gets done.
Yeah, I mean if you kind of think about it, and they all have varying levels of value, and whether or not they're really viewed as starting pitching prospects or more likely to be in the bullpen. But, right now, just between San Francisco and Sacramento, I mean, you have Kyle Harrison, you have Hayden Birdsong, Tristan Beck, Keaton Wynn, Mason Black, Landon Roop, Trevor McDonald, Carson Wisenhunt, Carson Ragsdale, Carson Seymour, like,
all the Carsons.
How many young pitchers? Yeah, I mean, all the different Carsons. Like, how many young pitchers are we going to have just sitting between our top 2 levels and refuse to move any of them? Like, and that's not even going into the guys that I think are, very clearly bullpen guys like, Randy Rodriguez and Eric Miller that established themselves last season. And then, you have guys like Juan Sanchez and eventually Reggie Crawford, who was also in AAA, but I didn't count him because he's coming off a torn labrum. Like, they have so many young pitchers that are up in those upper levels. Like, you can't just let all their value go away. So yeah, make a trade for a Spencer Steer, even if it costs you Carson Wisenhunt. Like, I would be so okay with moving Carson Wisenhunt, who's, yes, he has huge potential, but he has a lot of warts too. Like, I love his changeup. Fastball isn't great. Slide or curveball isn't great. Command isn't great. Like, there's a lot of stuff he needs to work on. And maybe you trade, a Tristan Beck with him, or maybe they want to, Trevor McDonald. Maybe they want someone that's like actually made it to the major leagues. Like, maybe you give them one of those guys and a Wisenhunt. And yeah, could it hurt you? Yeah, maybe. Also could end up being two guys that don't do anything. So like, you just never know, but you have so many pitchers that you're never going to be able to give all of these guys a shot. And if we just keep running through them and none of them work out, or they all their value goes away, like, what do you get out of it at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Oh, here, I'll jump to that one next. Nick says, so predict the Giants' names are 4th and 5th rotation guys. Where's the 6th guy? Hicks, Harrison, Birdsong. They talked up Hicks, but I think at the end of the day, like my gut says Harrison and Birdsong get named the 4th and 5th starters if they get Burnes. But I mean, maybe they do put Hicks there. I think once Hicks does end up in the pen, I don't think he'll end up being a swing guy. I think Tristan Beck ends up being your swing guy if he's still around. That would be my prediction.
Yeah, I think the Jordan Hicks project has to be over. I don't see the upside in it personally. I don't think you're really maximizing his arm as well as you could in the bullpen. And I just don't think the Giants have room for a project out of a guy at his age when you have all these young arms to work through. It's like, what's the point? You have him under contract for another 2 years, and he's even a guy, if you throw him in the pen, he has a hot start. You could end up trading him at the deadline too if you really wanted to, because you needed to open up a spot. But ultimately, I think he just has way more use in the bullpen, and with the money he's making, he can't really complain about what his role is. And if he does, trade him.
Yeah.
Somebody will want him unless he really struggles. But I mean, he has a pretty good track record out of the pen. So,
yeah. Trading for Sandy Alcantara. You guys like him? He had TJ in October 2023. So that puts him. Well, he should be about healthy now. He should get a full offseason, I think, or close to a full offseason, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't hate it, but what goes back, that matters. Like I would need to see. And I don't actually off the top of my head know his contract situation. I want to say he has 2 years, but I'm not 100% sure there. So, it's a lot to give up for Steer with Wisenhunt and McDonald. This is the way I look at it. Because of his how cost controlled he is, he has 4 years left on his deal. You're basically trading potential for potential, except for the guy you're getting back is a lot more proven than the 2 guys you're moving.
Yeah.
So you're having to move 2 guys because their guy has done it at the major leagues for 2 years at a relatively high level. I mean, last season, yeah, he had a 225 average, not great, but he still walked 11% of the time. So he had a better than league average on base percentage. He had 20 home runs, like 58 extra base hits, 25 stolen bases, like 92 RBIs. Like it's really good what he did in his down year. And I think he would regress. He had like a 260 batting average on balls in play. Like, I have reason to believe that that's going to go up. Like, there's some bad luck that got involved in those numbers. So I would imagine like he would end up being better than what he showed last season. Maybe not, an 800 plus OPS, but I think he'd be high 700s, good amount of power. And then if you move Wisenhunt, this is a guy that had a 5.17 ERA last season and like a 1.6 whip. And yeah, we could point to how bad he was on the road versus home. But it's not like, there's a reason why he was like a top 70 prospect and then he fell off the list entirely. Like, he had a really bad year, and is he going to bounce back, or is it going to continue to trend that way? So you can trade him while he still has value, because he does. He's a premier left-handed pitching prospect. And then McDonald, I think at the end of the day, I think he's going to be in the pen. Like, I don't view him as a starter. I've made that pretty clear on my show on all these episodes. Like, I don't view him as a starter. Maybe he proves me wrong. I think if you put him in the starting rotation, he's a guy that's going to have Tommy John in a couple years, or all sorts of other forearm issues or arm issues. So I think he's a reliever. So do I care about trading a reliever and a guy that's got potential to be a good starter? It wouldn't bug me at all.
And I think you kind of nailed it when you mentioned what's the one position that the Giants have a surplus of. It's starting pitching, young starting pitching. And Steer would have been one of your top 3 hitters last year, arguably, after Chapman and Ramos. So it's a no-brainer.
If anybody wants to know why I'm so fine with trading Carson Whisenhunt, one person, Joe Whitman. I think Joe Whitman's going to be a better pitcher between the two of them. I think he's going to be in Richmond next season, and I think he's going to push his way up to Sacramento in a year. I have no problem trading Carson Whisenhunt, because I personally believe Whitman is going to be the better of the two pitchers. Now, Giants have more information than I do. All I can go off is what I've seen, but that's where Manazzi and all these guys need to make the determination on which guys they believe in and which guys they're willing to move on from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, I've told you before. I mean, I think Whitman has a changeup that's just as nasty as Whisenhunt's, and it just never gets talked about. And he has other really good secondary pitches where there's some questions about Whisenhunt as he's gotten into AAA and faced a little bit more difficult pitching or hitting. Sorry. And ultimately, it's not a perfect comparison, but Giants fans need to remember what happened with, guys like Kyle Crick and Phil Bickford and these guys that the Giants have drafted in the first round, and they have high upside and they have these big power arms, and then they end up fizzling out, and then they end up getting converted to relievers, and that just kind of kills all value out of those guys. Yeah. So, and that could absolutely be something that ends up being in Whisenhunt's future. So, I really wish for the best with him, but ultimately when you have a guy that even in a down year is hitting 20 home runs and stealing over 20 bags and is only making $800,000 a year, and he's 27 years old, right in the middle of his prime, like, you'll take that. Giants especially. It's just a need for a need. The Reds always struggle to develop pitching. Giants always struggle to develop hitting. It's a need for a need, and that would be, I think, a great trade for the Giants, especially if you're worried about the futures of Matos and McRae panning out.
Yeah.
He's he's kind of a contingency for them. Like, if they don't, and Tibbs is maybe a year plus away, if he can even go that quickly. Like, if they don't pan out and the Luciano experiment doesn't go well, like, the Giants don't have a lot of outfield. They have a lot of guys right there at the major league level or AAA level that are kind of in this wave of guys they can use, but they don't have a lot behind that for a while. Once you get past there, it goes all the way down to basically high A with guys like Tibbs. And then down in San Jose with guys like Dakota Jordan, Rainer Arias should probably be in San Jose next season, Jeremiah Jenkins, and all these other guys that are out there. So, is Jenkins outfield or is he first? I don't know why I thought.
I believe he plays both.
Maybe he played both. Okay. So it's like you have those guys like way down in the lower levels. So, if the Matos and McRae experiment doesn't go well and Luciano doesn't pan out and Eldridge comes up, boom, kick Steer out to left field. He's plenty athletic to play left field in Oracle Park, as we've mentioned. So, yeah, like it's a good fit. I think it's a good trade for both sides. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to say like Whisenhunt's going to suck. Like, he could be really good. And I think it gives the Reds a guy that helps them now, because I think McDonald's ready to, contribute today. and it would give him a guy that's, got potential, got a lot of upside in the rotation. So that might be ready out the gate for them. So, but yeah, I like Whitman. I think Whitman has a better overall pitch mix and better command as a whole. So he went through some ups and downs last season, but I just think overall, I feel like he has better command. So yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, Wynn and Beck, they would be options for that too. I love Tristan Beck, but if you told me it was Wisenhunt and if it was Wisenhunt and Beck, I'd be fine with that too. Like it's not Beck's not a guy that I would like stop a trade for. I think Roop is like the one, because I don't think you need to move Harrison or Birdsong, but Roop is the one that I would really not want to move. I really like Landon Roop.
Yeah. I do too. And with Beck, I think he's our best option for middle relief and can make a huge difference this year. But I think the Giants have numerous guys that are kind of at the stage in their careers where they're kind of big league ready and can absolutely fill a middle relief role where they're not going to have the pressures of having a team game plan for him out of the rotation. So I think he's totally replaceable. If you do need to package him in a trade, probably not the best time to trade for or have him sent out in a trade, because you're not going to get the most value out of him since he hardly pitched at all last year. But they have numerous other guys that are prospects still that you could trade that are kind of in that tier.
Yeah. This will be the last one, then we'll probably hop off here, but I thought we had it starred, but Cole earlier mentioned he said, should they get either of the Kims now that they have Adames? Either Kim could play second base and be fast and have contact skills, then make Fitzy a super utility. Thoughts? I'll start it off. Like, if you told me Ha-Seong Kim's market plummeted to the point where you could get him for pretty cheap, I kind of would be all over it to have him play second base. Like, have him play second, make Fitz a super utility guy that plays all over the place, and let Kim lead off. I'd probably do that and then put Lee behind him. I think you could probably do something like that. A lot of speed.
I'd be fine with either Kim for a cheap deal and, sliding Fitz to a super utility role. I mean, I've wanted Fitz to be more of a utility guy. So I'd be open to it, of course. I just, don't want to overpay.
Yeah. I don't think the team would do it, but I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, I remember telling you guys when Adames signed, I'm like, I am way more cool with getting Ha-Seong Kim now that you have Adames there, because I would personally rather have Kim at second base, Ha-Seong Kim, that is, at second base, just because of the injury concerns coming off that, torn labrum or the shoulder surgery he had. And then as far as the younger Kim, I mean, for those of you guys that don't know, he was the only KBO player to ever win a Gold Glove at both second and short. So he's very solid defender, a lot of speed, pretty good contact skills, kind of like Jung-Hoo Lee. Just you're not really going to get a ton of power out of him, but I also don't see him getting anywhere near the type of deal that Jung-Hoo Lee got. So he could be a good option. I mean, I don't see them going for him. They really seem pretty stuck on giving Fitz a legit shot, and the younger Kim's not really a guy you're gonna sign and throw in Sacramento to stash. So
yeah,
I just don't see the fit being there personally.
Yeah. All right, I'm doing one more. Would I dangle Birdsong for an impact bat? Who's the bat? How many years? Control, cost.
Yeah,
that's I really don't want to trade Birdsong, but I am not against trading Birdsong. So it would have to be the right fit on a lot of levels, depending on cost control, how many more years they're under contract, like age, who the bat is. There's just a lot of factors with that. So, but short answer, I would be open to it.
Vlad Jr., sure.
I think we've kind of talked about it in general, where we mentioned, like, especially when it comes to business, you got to be open and willing to move anybody for the right price. Yeah. And that's just what it comes down to. Do you want to move Birdsong? Of course not. Would you if you got some crazy offer you couldn't refuse? Yeah, you'd be dumb not to. So it's kind of what it falls into for me personally.
Like, how many truly untradeable players are there in Major League Baseball? Like 3?
I'd say probably, like, yeah.
And like 2 of them are in LA right now. Like, it's like there's only a couple that you just truly would just laugh someone off the phone. I mean, I think the only guy I've seen, like, there's been like 2 guys in my lifetime with the Giants, like watching the Giants, that I felt like were truly untradeable on their roster. One was Barry Bonds and the other was Buster Posey, because there's just, at the end of the day, you were never going to get the value back at, moving either of those guys, because Buster wasn't necessarily a top, 2 or 3 player in the game every year, but it's just, he did so many things beyond the numbers that you just were never going to recover the value for him.
I mean, so it's like positional value for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how many guys out there are just 100% untradeable? Now, the reality is there's probably 15 to 20 guys that you'll never get an offer that's going to make you do it. But I mean, we watched Wayne Gretzky get traded. Like, in hockey, like, every guy can be had for a price. So, like,
I mean, Mookie Betts, I mean, that was one of the dumbest things you could possibly do, especially as a big market franchise. Like, why? Like, that, and that is a perfect example of why you can't be overly attached to prospects. Especially if you can get a proven superstar in, the midst of his prime. I mean, the Dodgers at the time traded all these top 100 prospects. And what was the best player the Dodgers got, or the Red Sox got out of that trade? Verdugo. And where was he last year? New York. And where is he now? A free agent that does not have a ton of interest in him. So that trade blew up in Boston's face real quick.
Like if the Reds called me and they're like, hey, we'll trade you Ellie De La Cruz for Bryce Eldridge. I mean, I love Bryce Eldridge, but I'd be like, see it, dude. I'm getting Ellie and I'm going to offer him like $500 million to buy out his career. And I'm going to call it good. Like, 100%.
Yeah.
So every guy is on the table for me. It's just, there are, I throw out the word untouchable at times, but it's like, even Bryce isn't truly untouchable. It's just very, very rare that I'd put him out there.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that's a good spot to stop. Went a little longer than we expected, but I think we do every week. So at this point, maybe this should just be to be expected. For those of you watching, if you're on YouTube, if you haven't already, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're on X, jump over to YouTube, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We appreciate it.
How many viewers
are we still doing next? What's that?
So how many viewers were we at right now?
Oh, we have like 170 people right now in the show.
Hey,
between the two.
And none of those are bots. Look at us.
There it is.
If you know, you know. So, yeah. And, hope everybody has a great Christmas. Enjoy the holidays. I probably will try and put something out Monday next week, and then it'll be nothing for a few days over the holidays. So maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. I mean, if Corbin Burnes signs on Christmas Eve, I don't know, we'll figure something out, crank something. But otherwise, you're probably not going to hear from us for a few days.
I'll go live from my phone. I don't care. I'll step outside.
Yeah. We're all going to be sitting in front. It's like he signs on Christmas Day. We're all just like sitting with family.
Like
going
really,
nuts
bro.
around us.
Just more reason to hate Scott Boras.
I told you, man, he's the Grinch.
Yeah.
Hey, he'd be like, Merry Christmas to me. On that.
Asshole.
Oh, God. That's hilarious. Oh man. All right, everybody. You guys have a good holiday, and we'll catch you next week. Go Giants, and see ya.
All right, guys.